today's webinar by getting a little bit of information about you. So if we're going to go ahead, if we could, and start with poll number 1. This will be on the right-hand side. You'll see a poll, and you can let us know where you are from, the Chicago area, other parts of Illinois, another state, somewhere else altogether. Okay, so it looks like we have folks who are mostly from the Chicagoland area. That's terrific, and some of your names are familiar, and so hope to continue to see you. And then if we could do poll number 2, please, which is how you found out about this. The Women's Business Development Center is a nonprofit organization, but we operate like a small business, and like you with your businesses, like to find out how people heard about our programming and our services. We're just going to keep this open a couple more minutes if maybe everybody else can join in. This is Chicago after all. Vote early and often, folks. Okay, so it looks like it was a kind of a combination of our website and our e-blast newsletter. So that's terrific. Thank you very much. Okay, let's go ahead and get started then. What you're going to learn in today's webinar: identifying how and where and what kind of media you can use to spread your story, becoming more comfortable interacting with the media. And I find that this is a problem because a lot of people don't have experience talking with the media, and they get a little bit nervous. So hopefully you'll be a little more comfortable by the end of this. And then learning tips for becoming an expert. And what I mean by that is not necessarily an expert at dealing with the media, but being viewed as an expert if that is a tactic that can help you grow your business. And we'll talk more about that. So here's a little bit of housekeeping. On your right-hand side of your screen, you will see something that's called handouts. And there's 5 handouts actually this time for you to download. If you've been on some of these calls before, sometimes we have 2 or 3 or 4, but today you get 5 whole handouts. There's an article, some tools, and a framework, and we'll go through the tools and the framework like we normally do on these GrowthWheel webinars. You do need to download these during the program. And if you have any questions or any problems like that, doing so, just shoot me an email or shoot me a question, and I will respond to it and let our technical person know that we need some help. But if you don't download them until after the program, you won't be able to download them. So please do that. Okay. And at the end, we'll have opportunities to ask questions, although because of our handy little question tool here on the GoToWebinar site, you can just type it in whenever you're thinking of it, and then I'll either answer it right then, or if it's something I'm going to cover, I'll just get back to it as appropriate. And we also really like to encourage folks to speak with us in person, and I'll let you know about how that works at the end of the presentation as well. And again, these last usually about 45 minutes or so. We're sure we'll be done before 1 o'clock. A quick refresher on GrowthWheel. This is a tool that we use, and it's a licensed tool through the Small Business Development Center network in Illinois. And as a result, that's why we have to have you download the tools during the program, because we're not able to just have them up on our website later. So every business, as you know, needs an attractive business concept, a strong organization, the ability to operate profitably, and of course, good customer relations. And as you might guess, it is the customer relations quadrant here that includes communications and public relations, and that's where we're getting things from today. Right there. Communications and public relations. Okay. With all marketing, it's really important to start with your goal, right? You know, should you do free media? Should you do social media? Should you advertise on billboards? What should you do? There's all kinds of choices, obviously. And the way to make that decision is to come back to what is your goal. You want to think both short-term and long-term, and you also want to make sure, specifically with respect to the press and free media, that you're focusing on your business. So your goal probably shouldn't be to get into the media for its own sake, or to have a nice article that your mom can show all her friends at bridge or whatever. Your goal really should be about your business. A goal might be attracting retail customers to your new store. It could be positioning your new invention in front of potential investors. It could enhance your credibility as an expert in order to attract additional clients, for instance. Perhaps you're in a professional services business. So each of those goals then leads you toward a different type of media, right? So you want to match the media with your goal. If it's a retail mass market, then you would be looking at different forms of media that you would want to target than if you, and that would be, for instance, if you were trying to get people to come to your new retail store, as opposed to if you were trying to establish yourself as an industry expert, then obviously, something in your neighborhood newspaper wouldn't make any sense. So we'll talk a little bit more about that and how you can approach that with this super handy framework tool. And the frameworks, if you recall, are really just kind of overviews. They're not the worksheets, but it gives you a sense of what the media cares about. The media is a business too, and their business requires getting people to read or listen or pay attention to the stories that they publish or print or have on TV. So lots of things happen in the world, right? And in order to merit media attention, the story needs to be interesting. But what does interesting mean, right? So to the media, interesting means unexpected or unusual. It means kind of immediate, so something that's just happened or is about to happen. If you're planning for some sort of new customer 2 years from now, nobody cares. I mean, we'll just be brutally honest, nobody cares. So would you read an article about an unrelated business that was doing something, that was reporting on something that happened 6 months ago? Probably not. So you want to think about that immediacy. And stories that allow people to identify with the story. So this, another word for this would be relevant. So relevant to the media's audience. And again, a DNA info kind of newspaper is going to have a different audience than a professional journal. So, and then, impact on a lot of people, not just, a few. So a retail store might be interesting to a neighborhood newspaper. A new invention might be interesting to a local, either a trade publication or maybe a local business journal. So those are the things you want to be thinking about when you're positioning your business for getting media, again, with what your goals are and then what your business story is. So what is a story? Right? It's kind of fashionable now to hear people talk about telling your story, The main thing to remember is that a story has a beginning and a middle and an ending. So there needs to be kind of an arc of something that happens, right? It's not, a story is not just that you are now selling a new kind of product. A story needs to be, there was customer demand, or this product is interesting, or all of these, this is new and it hasn't been sold anywhere in this market or perhaps anywhere else. And the other thing about a story is it involves something changing. So stories help people remember things, and so they can evoke emotion, and that's why they're sort of in vogue. People like to position things as stories. If I were to give you a bunch of statistics about, why it's important to eat well, right? And I could give you tons of statistics about health and nutrition and so forth. Or I could just tell you a story about You know, a lady I know who had a lot of health problems, and she was able to lose weight using a particular program, and because she was so successful at losing weight, she was able to go off of certain medications, right? So that's more emotionally emotive, right? That you're going to remember that more than the fact that, you know, I might say 15.6% of people are like this, or 32% of, you know, drugs are like that. You want to be able to personalize it. So maybe you're a veteran who used the skills that you learned in the military to start your own engineering firm, just as an example. So that's a story, and it might help people remember your firm in a positive way, right? I mean, Americans like veterans, and if you're talking about, again, the skills that you learned in the service, and that makes, you know, provides greater value for your clients in your engineering firm. But the story in itself is only a good press release for relevant media. And so, again, we're back to connecting it to your market. One of your goals might be to establish expertise. So this is a longer-term goal. So for instance, if you have a new restaurant and you get that grand opening into your local, maybe neighborhood newspaper, so that's planting a seedling, right? That's not going to guarantee people coming in, but it starts to make people think, oh, this looks like a great restaurant that I might go to. You know, and we're talking about over the next couple months probably, right? But so if that's a seedling, then establishing expertise is planting an acorn. So it's longer term, which might be exactly right. I don't mean that since it's long term you shouldn't do it, but I'm just saying you want to understand that getting your name and yourself quoted in an industry journal is not likely to result in the phone ringing tomorrow. But let's think this through. Think about why you want to be viewed as an expert and by whom. Again, you know, making your mom proud is not an appropriate goal here. But there's lots of appropriate goals that there may be. Maybe you want your target retail market to identify you with style and fashion. You may have a boutique and you want people to think about you in those ways, because then that would carry over to how they view the store. So maybe you would want to reach out into the fashion magazine industry. Maybe you want to target the corporate market so that they, certain types of corporations, see you as the go-to person for customer service training. So you want to establish yourself as an expert in customer service training. So your goals, excuse me, drive the appropriate media. So you want to demonstrate your expertise. You can, and these are all ways that people do it. It's not, again, necessarily that all of these things are the right thing to do. If you're looking to be a fashion expert, LinkedIn probably isn't the right approach. If you are looking to become this corporate training, the customer service training expert, you know, then there are conferences where HR people go to, or that are in particular industries, might very well be really good ways to demonstrate your expertise. I put a question mark by write a book, because that is one of the things sometimes people recommend. At that point, you need to decide kind of a cost-benefit in terms of your time, if nothing else. And you may be able to do this more effectively through other media. Not that I'm against writing a book. And then you also want to document your expertise. So you're demonstrating your expertise. You're having blog or LinkedIn posts, and again, these are not LinkedIn updates, but LinkedIn posts that, you know, you are talking about customer service issues and how they can be resolved, to show people that you really know what you're talking about. But now that you've done this, you want to document your expertise. Excuse me. So your website needs to include your qualifications. It needs to include your company's experience, and often a really good thing, and this is back to the story issue, is to have some case studies where that's possible. I mean, ideally, you can say for company X, we did ABC, and have company X's logo there. But if you're not able to do that, at least to be able to describe this story. So if you know, company X was the local Pepsi distributor in your market, you can say, you know, for a large regional beverage distributor, we, you know, helped their customer service employees improve yada yada, right? So you don't necessarily have to identify the customer, but you want to say what you accomplished for that customer. And for the love of Pete, make sure your LinkedIn profile has all this information. It never ceases to amaze me how many people don't. This is free. It is what people look at before they talk to you, and if it doesn't match the information on your website and just the way you want to present yourself to the world, you're really missing a huge opportunity. So that's that. On the same sort of line of, for Pete's sake, make yourself easy to contact. You know, give people a way to send you an email that has your name on it, or a phone number or something. Don't make people go through, and when I say people in this instance, I'm speaking of the media as well, go through some sort of contact form thing that you just, if you want to be an expert that the media will turn to, then, you know, make yourself an expert that the media can turn to. And if you are hidden somewhere, then that's just not going to work out. So here is a one of the worksheets, and again, I'm just going to remind you to please download those during the webinar. They're over in the handout section. There's 5 of them, and if you wait until after the webinar is over, you will not be able to access them. So please do that during the webinar. Okay, so here is one of the worksheets to help you. Here's what it says: select the right media and decide key messages to send out. So as with all GrowthWheel tools, my theory is fill it out however makes you happy, whatever works for you. But typically you would have a campaign or theme name, and let's just say that this is your retail store opening, right? So, you know, this would just be, you know, opening day kind of thing. What is the key message? This is really important to think through. So, because if you are unclear on it, you can't expect the media to get it right or the public to understand it. So the key message here would be, my store is open, come buy from me, right? Now that's not how you're going to say it to people, but that's what you want folks to take away from this. And therefore, let's just say that your store is part of a kind of new development in a neighborhood, right? So you have a lot more, there's a lot more to talk about than just your store. But your message is going to be about your store. If the key message is that this is this new redevelopment in this neighborhood, you can get lost in that. So you want to keep focused on, you know, my store is part of this new redevelopment. And then the timing. When do we want to do this? I'm opening on June 1st, and so I would really like this to come out in early June. If it comes out right now, then people can lose that, right? It's mid-March today. These are recorded, so that's why I'm saying that. It's mid-March now. If I read in the paper tonight that there's a new store opening in June, I might think, wow, that's really cool, but you know, I'm going to lose that out of my little head, right? It's not something that's going to stick with in my brain. So now let's look at types of media and names of media. So again, we're going to open this little store. So newspapers, and since you're all pretty much in the Chicago market, I will remind you that papers like Red Eye and DNA Info are super good for these kinds of neighborhood level stories. Magazines probably wouldn't be so interested if it's a small retail store, but possibly, but unlikely. Certainly not a national magazine. TV, maybe. Uh, TV likes things that are visual, right? That makes sense. So perhaps if you're having some grand opening celebration that you're going to have a bunch of colorful balloons and a band and all that kind of thing, maybe. But the other thing to remember is that TV has about 20 minutes of news of room that they're selling every night, and you're easily bumped by, frankly, a bad car accident, or the mayor does something, or whatever, and then you're simply not important enough to make it into that very, very small amount of fridge space that they have. Radio. Radio can be a terrific tool in neighborhood media, but you want to then think about what kind of radio stations might be interested. Social media, and of course, you know, that's a whole different animal in and of itself in terms of how you can position your social media plan. And we do have some resources on our website, wbdc.org, about that. And I will, at the end of this, talk a little bit about how you use social media to leverage the free media that you're getting. And then blogs. So again, these two things are things you control. These other things are things that other people control. And that's really what my focus is today, are these other areas. So again, remember though, you need to have a story that is relevant, interesting, urgent, maybe has some conflict. The media loves conflict, right? We don't as business owners, but the media does. So that's kind of a balance you want to work through. Okay, so let's just say that you've decided that you're going to do DNA info. Well, there you go, DNA info right there. Now, what is this name of journalist? Oh my gosh, do these people have names? And the answer is yes. Yes, they do. If you can find the name of the person that you're dealing with, you are much more likely to be successful, just like in sales, right? If you're calling on a business customer, it certainly behooves you to find out who is their purchasing person, or who is the person within the organization who's going to make the decision to buy, and refer to that person personally as opposed to, you know, dear purchasing department. And then how to angle the message to the media. So again, this gets back to how do we make it interesting. So we have this new store, right, that's part of a redevelopment. So the redevelopment maybe is important, but you want to make sure that there's a focus on your store too. So what is interesting about your store, what's different, what's new, what's relevant to lots of their readers, those are the things that, that you want to be able to focus on. So this tool lets you kind of put together that plan. And another tool, Media Stories. This then helps you with a checklist to drill down into your business and angles that you might pitch. And remember, you're looking for immediacy, relevance, something that's unusual, something with conflict. Now let's say that you already have your business going, and so there's not an event to, you know, focus around like a grand opening. But let's see, you can just kind of go through this. Is there an interesting person in your organization? Maybe it's you, maybe it's somebody else, that, again, people outside of your immediate family might find compelling, interesting. You know, maybe you have an employee who has accomplished some remarkable thing. That would be what a portrait would be about. An anniversary, kind of self-evident, that, you know, your business has been there for 50 years or something, or that you've gotten some kind of award. So another type of publicity then would be about your opinions. So it might be some kind of letter or statement. This, again, gets into the how to set yourself up as an expert. And often this can be one of the ways. So let's say that you are an engineering firm and you've decided that a good long-term marketing strategy for you would be to develop kind of this awareness of your expertise, I'll say that, in particular types of construction, okay? And let's just say that it has to do with bridges, that you're a civil engineer. So if you read an article in maybe one of the larger national newspapers or maybe in a trade journal about bridge construction, and you follow up with the writer and you say, you know, that was a really great article. I also have these other kind of opinions that I would suggest, or did you know about this or that? And you can just provide them that information. They're not going to do anything with it in the immediate term, but they may then start to think, oh, well, next time I do an article about bridges, I should call this person because she really seemed to have a sense of that topic. So you might have events that are happening. We talked about that. New products being released, or significant new customers. Okay, so those are all just ways to kind of think about specific things in your business that might be newsworthy. And again, this is what the media values, right? Think about what you read about that doesn't have anything personally to do with you. It typically is going to focus on those areas. Okay, so now you've decided what you're going to do, and you want to write a press release about it. Oh my gosh, what do you do now? So this is a nice tool that helps you kind of put that together. So a news release or a press release, and it's the same thing, is basically like a newspaper story. So you want an eye-catching or an ear-catching, if it would be a radio or TV, first paragraph. It should be interesting for people. And again, I'm going to reinforce that those people don't include your mom, people who really don't care otherwise, but they're just looking at the paper, flipping through the TV channels. You know, that's the person you want to catch. And you want to focus on immediacy, relevance, how it's unusual, and if there's conflict. Maybe you're getting a theme here, that those are things that you want to be able to really focus on with the media. So what you do, you have your topic, when you're going to release it, because that obviously is important. And see how it says version 1 and version 2? You're going to go through this a couple times. So, you know, just accept that, which is fine. That's how really any good writing happens. Your headline will be, as it says, powerful, interesting, noteworthy, and needs to be kind of action-packed. And focus again on your message. Subheadline, if you have one, that, you know, just as another kind of a tagline if you want. The lead is the who, what, where, when, why, when, and how kind of thing. It's your first sentence, and again, it's got to be that eye-catching first paragraph. The way reporting used to be done was they called it the inverted pyramid. I'll draw an inverted pyramid. And so the most important stuff was at the top, and then it became less and less important and less and less important. And the reason for that was because at some point it would get axed. The reporter might do a story that's this whole size, and then the editor says, oh, I only got room for this much, so I'm axing it here. Well, if you have the least important information down at the bottom, then that's not as big a deal, right? And people do journalism a little bit differently now, but the thought of this is still a good one, which is you want people to get, you want to increase your bang for their informational buck. So people are only going to spend a certain amount of time reading, and you want them to get the most information at the top, and then as you go down, right, then they may stop reading, and it would be less, they're going to miss less, or if they're super interested based on how you've grabbed their attention, then they're more likely to read the whole thing anyway. So that's kind of my little picture for you today. Okay. In addition, then, you want a quote from a key person. It might be you, it might be a customer, again, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. And then some background information, and again, that's toward the bottom. You don't start out with, you know, Susie's boutique opened today, that Susie's owned this business, and this is about Susie, and who cares, right? So the headline and the lead will be about there's this exciting new women's clothing boutique that's opened in this redeveloping neighborhood, right? That's what's interesting. And you get down to Susie down here, right down toward the bottom. Then even sort of less interesting for most people is the company profile, information about the company. And this might even just be not technically even in the news release. It might just be kind of a separate paragraph at the bottom. And then please, 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 contact information. If you want additional information, call Susie Jones. Here's her phone number. Here's her email. This is information that doesn't get published, but it lets the reporter know who to contact. And then there may be some, if you have some pictures or that kind of thing, you can send those along as well. So in an ideal world with, journalists, they're going to take this information and they're going to say, oh, that's an interesting story, and then they'll call you and they'll write about it, and they may take the quote from the news release or they may not, but the purpose of the news release was to get their interest. What happens more and more, because so many media outlets are so strapped for money and therefore staffing, is you may end up with your article just flat out in the media. I mean, it may end up seeming very familiar to you. So, which is a terrific thing if that's what happens. But you do want to make sure that, that it's what you would want. Kind of a note, and this gets into the version 1, version 2 sort of thing. I find it nearly impossible to edit my own writing of something that I'm super excited about, because I go way deep into the weeds, into the details, and they matter to me, and they're super important, but they don't matter to anybody else, and it's hard for me to tell the difference. So it's usually helpful for me to have a friend or a family member review it, not just for spelling and grammar, but also just to help keep you from getting bogged down in the details. So I find that to be a good technique. I'm actually a very good editor of somebody else's stuff and a really bad editor of my own, and I find that to be a common problem among lots of people. So it may be yours too. Okay, so you've done all this. You've identified a fun little angle. You've sent out a press release, and oh my gosh, then they call. Okay, so that can be scary, and this is where we get to helping you work through maybe a little bit of comfort. So if they call you, and it generally will be a call. Reporters generally don't go out in person. Again, we're talking about relatively low-staffed organizations. It's much more efficient for them to just pick up the phone and call. So you want to, again, think about what you want to say. This gets back to your message. And so that tool a few slides ago, which hopefully you are downloading, just a reminder, please download all of the things in the handouts before the end of the webinar. But that message is something you want to keep coming back to. If they've left you a message and you want to be, I mean, you can dodge them, right? You can ignore them, but that's not what this is about. This is about that you want essentially their help in getting your word out. So you have to call them back right away. Reporters are on deadline, more so than anybody else in the business world. If you call them back tomorrow and they were going to run this story today, you have done them no help. I mean, they've moved on to some other story. And the next time they need help, they probably, if you're trying to establish a little bit longer-term relationship with them, they're not going to call you because you didn't call them back the last time. So immediacy is super important for reporters. Offer to help. Maybe they need, do you need a picture? Do you, is there some other, if they're asking about something you don't know, maybe, you can make a suggestion of someone that they could call who might have that answer. And then this is my hard part, right? Try not to ramble. Good luck with that. Someone else can do a webinar on that, and I will happily attend it. Remember, there is no such thing as off the record, okay? So, you know, people sometimes think that they're trying to be really cute. If you say it to report it, if you are unwilling to see it on the front page of the Chicago Tribune, then you simply should not say it, okay? That's just that. Sometimes, you know, political figures can get away with doing that. You can't, and just don't. I mean, don't even bother. If you don't want it on the front page of the paper, simply don't say it, and then that solves that problem. At the same time, though, remember that they're probably not out to get you, okay? Certainly, if you're a small business owner, they're not out to get you. DNA Info is, you know, they're covering this neighborhood redevelopment, and they want to do a story about this cool new boutique that's opening up, right? So unless you're being investigated by the government, you know, you're fine. So you don't have to deal with them with a lot of suspicion. But again, understand who you're dealing with. You're dealing with someone who isn't an expert in your industry. You're dealing with somebody who's on a very tight deadline. And you're dealing with somebody who is going to reflect in their writing or their presentation what they believe the most important things are that you've said, which again then gets back to you want to make sure that your message is very clear. Okay, so then what happens? You've got this great article, it's in DNA Info, and crickets, right? The nice thing about social media is that you have a lot more control over what you do with that piece than you used to, right? It used to be that you'd cut it out, you'd frame it, you'd get an extra copy for your mom, and that would be the end of it. But here, you know, in our modern world of the internet, you can and should get a lot of hits out of it. You should post a link to it on your Facebook page. You can tweet it out. You can put it on your LinkedIn page. Again, now this gets back to what is the message, what is the purpose of it. But let's use the example of opening the store. Your store should have a Facebook page. And you should, if you're selling kind of general retail products to general consumers, so post the link on your Facebook page. If Twitter is a format that your market uses, tweet it out. If it's not, don't. If you are doing this, if you've been maybe contacted by the Bridge magazine that wants to do a story that includes you as being quoted as an expert on bridges, put it on your LinkedIn profile. You can also have a little bit more proactive output in terms of getting it to specific people by emailing it to your stakeholders. Again, depending on what it is and who your market is and what your market goals are, maybe you send it out to all of your customers or maybe to some prospects. So that's another thing. You want to get as much mileage from this piece as you can, and of course then you're going to put it or link it on your website. But that's not all. You want to also keep the reporter engaged. Send a thank you note, right? So your mom was right when she said that you should write handwritten thank you notes. No one gets thank you notes anymore. No one does. And so when somebody does, that's really a special event, right? I mean, think about it. When you get a thank you note from a customer or from an employee or anybody, it's meaningful. Reporters are not used to getting thank you notes. So that's, you know, a way to just kind of reinforce with them a few days after they've spoken with you and done the article that you appreciated their help, and, you know, and their piece, and that, you know, you got nice comments on it or whatever. Connect to those reporters on social media because you may need them again, or frankly, they may need you. So you've you know, done your grand opening of your boutique, and maybe now it's a year or two down the road, and the reporter has to do a feature about clothing or something, right? And they remember, oh yeah, you know, there's that store over on Argyle. I could, you know, give her a call. It's easier to do that to help people remember you if you are connected on social media. And then also in the future, let them know about other major announcements. whether that's for the business or maybe you've received a new certification, as again, we're back on the engineering example. So those are ways to to continue to build on that initial coverage, because if it's just that one article, you've done an awful lot of work and you're not going to get much payout out of it. Again, this is a longer term type of effort. Oops, sorry. You do want to make sure that you keep this professional, right? So your thank you note should be nice and professional, and you generally shouldn't offer gifts or free stuff, because reporters are generally not supposed to take that stuff. So, you give somebody a free cup of coffee when they come into your coffee shop to talk with you, that's fine, but don't feel obligated or even feel that it's appropriate or appreciated to give more of a gift, because that makes the reporter feel like they're not disinterested or that they're not being objective. Okay, so now some, you know what, I missed polls 3 and 4. Sorry. So let's do poll 3 and 4 now. Sorry about that. To ask people how long you've been in business. So if we can ask folks that. So that poll should be up, yeah. So people are either kind of a feasibility, they've started planning, they've been in business up to 3 years or more than 3 years. Okay, if we can ask people to keep voting, I want to try and get a little bit better sense. Okay, well, it looks like most people are not yet in business, so that's terrific, helpful. Thank you for me to know. And then question number 4, poll number 4, have you worked with an SBDC before? So we have somebody who's worked with an out-of-state SBDC. The Small Business Development Center Network is a national network, so that's great that you worked with someone else. We have some folks who have worked with us, and then some who have not. So I want to invite people to see us at the Women's Business Development Center. We are an Illinois SBDC, and Meg Herman, who's our Director of Entrepreneurial Services, and myself are our 2 certified GrowthWheel advisors, if you're in the Chicago area, which when we started this off, it looked like most people were. You can use these tools on your own, of course. They are yours, again, if you download them before the end of the webinar. They are your tools to use, but you can also, if you have questions about this sort of thing, just make an appointment to see us. We would love to speak with you either in person or by phone or Skype. And then if you're outside of Chicago, you can just go to sba.gov and type in your state, and you can find an SBDC near you. So you can schedule an appointment with us, and there are a gazillion GrowthWheel tools. We've been talking about 5 of them, 4 tools in an article, which I do encourage you to read, on this particular topic of public relations, but everything from how to analyze cash flow to how to define your ideal target market and target customer, what kind of price points you need to be looking at, all of those things we've got tools for. And we have webinars that are archived on our website, which you're able to look at anytime you want. And we also have a lot of other GrowthWheel webinars that are coming up. So our next GrowthWheel webinar is going to be in April. We do an introduction to GrowthWheel every month. That's April 14th. But then on April 20th, Meg Herman is going to do one called Does Your Revenue Need a Boost? And that is going to focus on 26 different revenue models for starting, changing, and growing your business. And I find that to be a super helpful tool to work through, to think more broadly about a business. So maybe you're in the retail business and you're thinking in terms of a retail model, and that's great, but maybe there's some service additions you could add to it to help boost your revenue, that sort of thing. And then on April 26th, I'm doing one called Delegating, Find More Hours in the Day. And so that'll be some tips for delegating more efficiently, managing folks more efficiently. So as you grow your business, that might be of value. I want to do poll number 5 now, please, to find out how you plan to use this information in the future. And we're kind of closing toward the end of the webinar, so if you want to make sure that you're, after you vote in this poll, which nobody's voting, so please vote, then download those handouts before the end. And I'll stay on for a few moments after the webinar is ended because there are a lot of handouts to download. It looks like people are going to use these tools, so that's terrific, because I do think that these are particularly helpful ones when you're dealing with the media. Okay, we'll go ahead and close up that poll. And then our last poll, these questions all seem rather random, but in a moment I will explain to you why we're asking whether you're a veteran, interested in childcare, or in the Aurora western suburbs of the Chicagoland area. Well, we have a veteran business outreach center here, but we don't have any veterans on the call today, and we have a lot of expertise in the WBDC and childcare and some specific programs for those kinds of businesses. And then we have a women's business center and scale-up program out in the Aurora area. But it looks like today none of you are interested in that, which is fine. Okay. So how do you set up an appointment? And I think I forgot to mention that all advising is done at no cost because it's being provided through your tax dollars, so thank you very much. We can meet in person or by phone or by Skype. And it takes about, usually a meeting is, 50 minutes to an hour kind of thing. You can, and sometimes people are asking, do I need to fill out the GrowthWheel tools before that? And no, you don't necessarily have to, but it can be a good way of kind of focusing the conversation and making the most effective use of your time. So if you want to set an appointment with Meg Herman or myself or anyone here at the WBDC, you can just call our main number there, and they schedule all of us. If you've been in business for 3 years or more, I'm happy to work with you. If you're newer or in the planning stage, either Meg or myself and the ladies at the front desk can get you scheduled in to see either one of us. Okay, so before we wrap up, are there any additional questions? I hope that you found this helpful. It is a little bit scary dealing with the media sometimes because for most people it's new. But just remember to focus on your message, make sure that you know what your goals are, why you're doing this, and that drives you into the right kind of media. And we're here to help you along the way. So please do think of us, and our phone number is back up there again. Let's keep the webinar open for a few more minutes, Eleni, just to make sure people have a chance to download all of the handouts, maybe for another 2 or 3 minutes. So if you haven't downloaded them all, please go ahead and do that now. And look forward to seeing you again on another webinar. Thank you.